Welcome to the 7th generation BMW M5. This is the most powerful M5 ever, but it's not the fastest. We'll get to that in a second. So the hybrid system in the new M5 is a first for the model. It delivers a staggering 717 horsepower, 738 foot-pound of torque, gets the car to 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. Pretty fast, but actually a little slower than the last generation model. So why is that? Well, it's the extra weight that is associated with that hybrid system. It's a lot, and it pushes this M5 over 5,000 pounds, well over, almost to 5,400 pounds with standard equipment. Now, you can get that down a little bit with some options, but there's no getting around the fact this is a very heavy car. So, does the power and all of the wizardry that M has created with the new M5 overcome that weight deficit? Is this truly an M car still? We went to South Carolina and some of the best, most beautiful back roads that the state could offer. And then we took it to BMW's Performance Center in Spartanburg to find that answer. Welcome to the all-new BMW M5. It's a 5,300 pound, 700 horsepower four-door sedan. Those are approximations. It's heavier or lighter depending on options, of course. And in terms of the power, it's a hybrid. So we have 577 horsepower from the twin-turbo V8, and we have, of course, that hybrid unit, which gives us an extra 230 roughly horsepower, roughly 230 foot-pound of torque, and so it's a monster. There's no way around it when I think about what this car is capable of. It is beyond anything that we've ever experienced in M5. Now, there's asterisks there. I mean, this is also a car that's very heavy. Technically, 0 to 60 is slower than the previous M5. So there's limitations that were really, unfortunately, kind of self-inflicted by the strategy that BMW looked at and ultimately decided on for this car. But it doesn't mean anything if it's amazing. I mean, we've seen BMW overcome weight in the past, which of course is not an easy thing to do, but M engineers are, magicians. I don't know how else to put it. And so the BMW M5 has got a long history of being kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's a car that is relatively subdued very often, but it packs a big punch. And in a lot of ways, this follows that trend. I mean, there's definitely a little bit more boy racer in some of the styling, but it's still subtle. And I think BMW M Design has done a fairly good job of what they put together with this car. And quite frankly, I mean, they didn't, of course, choose the size of the car. This is, of course, a 5 Series that was built on the CLAR platform, which is both a electric and a ICE platform. So it inherently has some limitations, or let's say, inherently some flaws when it comes to being a pure petrol car or a pure EV. And I think what we have here, of course, is that mix, that PHEV, that plug-in hybrid, which allows for, really easy electric getaways as needed. And wow, an enormous amount of torque. And what this engine does so well is it fills the gaps with that V8, with that twin-turbo V8, and it creates what feels to be seamless power and thrust, because that's the word for it here. Thrust that you just are almost taken aback by when you first get in the car. It's one thing to have an electric car that, of course, just crushes you 0 to 60, but it's another to have a petrol car with all the noise and kind of drama associated with it, and have that same type of just instant on acceleration. And that's what this feels like to a degree. It's not full electric in terms of the way, of course, produces power, but it does have a sort of a sense of that. Now, power and engine aside, one of the things that is really a hallmark of the M5, of course, is sort of scalpel-like reflexes and the ability to, really feel your car, no matter how big it is, in the corners, understand traction limits, understand, ultimately how much you can place this car. And I've got traction control pretty much all on. Actually, that's not true. MDM mode is on, and I'm taking it easy because this is wet up here, and we're actually in Paris Mountain, which is just outside of Greenville, and we're in the fog, and so one little wrong turn is going to be pretty dramatic in terms of what happens. So I'm definitely trying to ease into this drive, but what I do feel is what the car is doing. As I go through some heavy fog here, thankfully, I do feel, I would say generally what I felt before, which isn't sort of that pure feedback and sort of pure steering feel that we might have had with an E39, certainly an E28 M5. But at the very least, BMW, through a lot of, frankly, thoughtful digital wizardry, has created sort of a synthetic version of that very analog feel. Is it as good as it once was? No. I mean, again, from a purist perspective, in terms of the feedback I'm getting through the wheel, it's not. But it's as good as anything I've driven on the market in this class. I have to say yes. You could argue the Panamera GTS has more purity to it, and to some degree, yeah, I agree with that. But at the same time, there's a BMW quality to this car that is quite literally intoxicating. Let's do it. So what I'm feeling so far is maybe not a surprise. I mean, BMW M engineers have really once again crossed that threshold into magic and created a car that, despite the 5,300 pounds it carries, feels, for one, you feel the road, you understand what's happening with the car. Believe it or not, this is a car that actually can rotate to a degree around corners. It's also, and again, dialed back into just sport, it is a car that sort of flows as well, and there's some nuance to it that, my God, just seems almost impossible for them to be able to have accomplished. A lot has been written and said about this car. I mean, there's YouTube videos galore about the M5 and the weight. Many people who haven't even driven the car talk about the 5,300 pounds. It's as heavy as an i5, the EV5 series. It is as, it's damn near, it's heavier than X5s. It's a heavy car. And there's no escaping the fact that you do feel it when you push things. But listen, I'm not at a track. I'm on the road, and I'm on a pretty curvy road, a beautiful road, and I'm not really bothered by the weight so much. I'm not really bothered by the mass as I go through these corners, and as I really kind of become confident with where the car is at. And so, I think, and therefore, when I think about what the brief was with this car, they've really accomplished it. I mean, they built on a hybrid platform, built on a platform that also has to carry a full-on EV in the i5, for instance. They have done a phenomenal job. Now, it doesn't mean that this is a home run. In a lot of ways, I can't help but look at this and wonder, what could they have done, without the extra weight penalty of the hybrid system? You would have an M5 that is pretty interesting. But at the same time, BMW didn't really change this engine. This is a very lightly revised version of the previous MV8, that twin turbocharged with the hot V. That's, it's been around in M cars for quite a while. In fact, it's the same engine that's in the X7 M50, for God's sake. They didn't really change much of it. In fact, if you look at the power, they've tuned it down a little bit because they have so much extra power through the electric motors. And so, without those electric motors, what would M have done here to create a different car, or a car that takes that previous generation M5, which was fantastic, especially in CS trim? What would they have done to make it even more special? And yes, there's technology, there's things that you can do that you couldn't have done when that previous car was developed, for sure. But it's very clear with what they've done is they've added this hybrid system, and they have created an experience that is unquestionably quicker. And it's quicker in the real world around these corners, coming out of corners. You have power no matter where you are. And so, yes, 0 to 60 time, it is slower. There's no question about it. But when I look at what this car does on the road and how it feels, the weight penalty, it's negligible in this type of road driving. Again, I'm not on a track. Most of these cars will never see track duty. And I think BMW M recognizes that. And I think they very thoughtfully tuned this car for its intended purpose. And let's be honest, the intended purpose is for, folks of fairly high means, a lot of dads out there who want a fast four-door. They're tired of the SUVs. They want something that's big. They can carry some of their associates with them. They can carry their kids with them. But they also can sort of reclaim some of that magic. They may have have had an M3 when they were younger. They may have had, something that, they long for. This is their way back into that without feeling like an absolute, sort of boy racer. And I think on top of that, if you stack this sort of the hybrid functionality with it, which means I can actually roll away from my house in total silence at 7 a.m. I don't have this massive V8 waking people up. That's actually a fairly compelling concept for a lot of the folks who would be looking at this car. And so I think, all in, when I consider what the M5 has been over the past, 4 decades, and where it's at today, it's very much the same brief. BMW hasn't lost the plot in terms of what they're trying to do. The consumer has changed. The consumer has changed. The world has changed. Legislation demands, front overhangs and, soft plastics and, all the things that have changed the shape of the car. None of us particularly like it, but that's just the case. We now have the need for cleaner cars, which I don't think is a bad thing. But we also have a consumer that expects more and wants more. And I think that's where things get really interesting. We can't have it all. And I think, with the M5 in a lot of ways, its whole premise is you can have it all. And what BMW has done is they've tried to bring everything to the consumer, to a very highly demanding consumer, and create a car that is, for all intents and purposes, everything to everybody. And, having spent a couple hours with this car now and having really driven it through some of the finest roads in South Carolina, I've got to say they, while not perfect, got pretty damn close. So we know how it feels on the road, but how does it feel on the track? And how does it feel when it's really pushed? We took it to BMW's Performance Center in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and did some of the very first laps on this track with the M5 to really get to that answer. Here's what we found. All right, so we are on track with the new BMW M5. This is the hybrid 577 horsepower in the V8, and it is 200 extra horsepower on the electric engine. It is a heavy car, but so far we haven't felt it on the street. Will we feel it on the track? That is the question. We're in M1, which is dialed back. It's about, let's say, medium, if you will. And taking some lines right now to sort of get a feel for just, again, the weight control in this car. And it is effortlessly fast. Of course, this car is shod with the carbon ceramics, which, let's be honest, just make you a hero. They do not fade at all. Some tight corners. The BMW Performance Center is a relatively tight track. It's a great track, though. It's a lot of fun. Great program they run down here. Highly, highly recommend it for anybody interested. So we've got power out of the corner, and let's go. All right, just switched into MDM mode. So that's M2. So we're gonna get a little slip angle on the corners. definitely a more immediate response from a throttle perspective. And I have to say the weight is controlled. It is not an M3, it's not a M2, but given the size and weight of this thing, it's shocking how I've got a lot of control. I've got a lot of grip as well. Let's see how this corkscrew does. This is a car that, whew, man, you want to hustle, but it's a big car. Little drift, just for fun. This is a really impressive car for the weight. To be honest with you, I shouldn't be shocked because M does this. This is what they do. But my Lord, have they delivered here? Yeah, a little lift off oversteer as well. I mean, they've got this thing dialed in. This is not a competition pack either. This is just the standard M5. Who knows what's to come? Wow. It's the kind of thing that you just live for. M5 on a track. Little hesitation on the input from the transmission.
We'll do the cool down now here, guys. So go back to M1 for that, please.
All right, back to M1. Wow, had to get one more in there. What a track.
Go on here, we'll kind of cool it for a lap and then bring him in.
So this is all new. So this is, of course, this is the first time these cars have been on this track. Maybe officially, unofficially, I don't know, but so they say. And we're finding out how to sort of deal with this hybrid mode. You know, it's a regen lap. So we're going to put some battery back in. I'm sorry, some power back into this battery, and of course, handing this off to another journalist. And it's interesting to sort of consider what that means for track days. You know, you buy this car and you want to be on the track for maybe, let's say, a session, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, give or take. And, you know, what does performance look like after 10 minutes, 15? It'd be very interesting to see. But I'll tell you what performance looks like in 4 laps of the BMW Performance.
Nice job. Y'all were neat and tight there. Looking great. Appreciate that.
It is amazing.
Weather group's throwing a little gravel out here, which is interesting, but we'll get that brushed up.
Yeah, I gotta tell you again, these guys are great, and so quick summary.
Back in here.
BMW M5 on the track. Yeah, I mean, this is an M car, and we shouldn't be worried, should we? You know, 5,300 pounds is a crazy figure to think about, but this is absolutely delightful and docile on this track. That rear steer, it's not aggressive, but it's enough to really kind of shrink the wheelbase, give this car, you know, that turn in, and ultimately allow it to feel like an M car. Good job, BMW. This is,
all right, gents, if you
this
would,
is fun.
follow me.
What do you learn from 2 days with the car? Usually not that much, but in this case, with some amazing back roads and of course some track time, we learned quite a bit about the new M5. Yes, it's heavy. Yes, it's complex. And no, it is not the analog M5 that we've seen from the E39, E28, etc. This is a new kind of M car. And in a lot of ways, you know, BMW is creating a car that's meant for that same consumer that was buying the E39. It's meant for that professional that wants to have something that feels as fast as a 911 Turbo and yet can haul kids, haul clients, haul dogs, haul whatever you need. It's that person who needs a duality that quite frankly seems impossible to create. And yet BMW has done it, much like they've done in the past with previous M5s. No, it is not perfect. Yes, we all wish it weighed 1,000 pounds less, but what they have accomplished with this car, despite the weight, is pretty remarkable. Of course, we can't help but wonder if you remove that hybrid system, tuned up that engine, what we'd really have here. And we might not ever know. But as it stands, we're pretty happy to see that the M5 has carried on the tradition of the M division in creating a car that is incredibly capable on the track, but also docile and just enjoyable on the road. If you like the video, please give us a like. It helps us a lot. And subscribe. We have a lot more BMW and, of course, a lot more Mini videos coming very soon.